Hey everyone, welcome back to the Trendcrusher podcast. I'm Peter K, aka Trendcrusher. This week on the podcast is Dylan Walker from Full of Hell. Their latest album, Coagulated Bliss, is out today, and we had a long chat about it. More on that right after this. So before I get into my chat with Dylan, I thought I'll play a track. This is by a well-known American heavy metal rock act, High on Fire. They're celebrating their 25th anniversary this year, and their new album, Cometh the Storm, released last week via Monarch Heavy. And yeah, the band have definitely not lost any step in the last few years. Cometh the Storm is a fucking banger. If you haven't already heard it, here's the title track from the album, Cometh the Storm. And if you enjoyed that track, High on Fire are going to be touring across US and later on the EU and UK. Do check out their website for more tour dates. I think you should definitely catch this tour. And now on to today's episode and my chat with Dylan Walker from Full of Hell. Here it is. All right. I'm joined by Dylan from Full of Hell. How's it going, man?
Hey man, pretty good day over here. Just getting ready to go on tour in a few weeks and rolling out this record.
Yeah, exciting times with the band. I mean, we're speaking a few weeks in advance of, actually a month in advance of your upcoming album, Coagulated Bliss, which is out on the 26th of April via closed casket activities. Just to kind of warm up the entire thing, how does it feel to just have new music coming out, doing press, talking to a journalist about the album?
Uh, it's nice. I guess we've done it a few times over the years. I don't really like talking about myself necessarily, but I also like talking to people, so I usually enjoy it. Yeah, especially like this kind of format where it's more conversational. It's fun. It's like I was thinking about it this morning. Putting out an LP to me is kind of like a final in like a college class or something. Just putting it out into the world and then kind of explaining it a little bit and then touring on it feels like a sort of like a final exam, but maybe in a more positive way. I don't know. It's like anything else. It's pressure and pleasure. It's like a lot of things.
No, I mean, since you've kind of touched upon it, let's kind of double tap on that, right? And especially with extreme metal, a lot of times where a lot of personal lyrics and personal kind of stuff is written in there. I know this album is kind of very different, but how, in general, what has been your relationship with some of the music that you release? I mean, let's be honest, you all have been quite prolific in the last decade or so, right? So performing live, you all can kind of choose with songs. But if you'd have to say generally, what's your relationship with that music later on performing it live?
I mean, for me, I've grown to enjoy recording so much. Like it's fully become like a really wonderful experience and part of why we do it all the time. But for me, when I started playing shows when I was 13, the feeling that I got from playing, we were playing the first venue I was playing was like a basement of a dog kennel. So that's like maybe a different kind of setting, but it was like pure electricity. It was like it felt like I don't know. I feel really fortunate because I found a thing where I mean, it like filled me. It was like, I love the culture. I love the music. I wanted extremity. You know what I mean? And my parents were super into music. So I guess my relationship with the band is just like, it's integral. It's like, it like fills my day and defines me to a point maybe that's even unhealthy at times. Like, and my bandmates are the same way. It's just like, it's all we've thought about for so long that it's like doing the band is like muscle memory. And actually like a period like COVID was pretty illuminating because it showed how important it was having it scooped away. Like it was so ingrained in me that I didn't even think it was as important as it was until I wasn't doing it. And I got so depressed because it defined so much of me. And in like generally in a healthy way as I get older, it's not like fully enveloped me in like a toxic kind of way, but it is like it's part of who I am. So yeah, I don't know. It's foundational, I guess would be a good way to describe it. It's just like I don't know anything else at this point.
So I had like a big grin in my face because while I may not be a musician, I could kind of relate when you're talking just from like being an attendee. And a simple example
Oh,
I can give
definitely.
you is this past weekend, I was supposed to attend a gig in another city and I'd kind of flown down. The show
Yeah.
got cancelled and I was really bummed out because, you know, you spend time in all
Oh
of that,
yeah.
booking tickets and things like that. So while I was in the other city, there was a gig happening of local metal bands in the city where I live, Mumbai. So I booked tickets from the airport. I straight went into that show. And when you talked about electrifying, that's exactly how I felt. Being with
Yeah,
like
definitely.
200 odd people who, you know, it suddenly, and I know it's a cliche to say brotherhood, but I think like being in a sweaty place with 200 other metalheads, I'm not going to say men, women, whatever, right? it's just something that takes over you, and then you realize you're part of this larger thing. So I completely understand what you
Exactly.
talk about. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. I remember also going in through this kind of funk of sorts, if I may call it, when I didn't go to concerts at all in 2020. And then it was also not safe. So it's like you're trying to figure out. And I mean, you remember live music, or they said there was
Yeah,
the death of live music and streaming. Look,
dude, it
look
was
at all of
scary.
us today, man. Look at all of us.
It freaked all of us out, like all my friends and everything. Because at this point, like after all these years, as I'm sure with you, like all of our friends are in music, and like all of my peers in bands, we were all just like, especially the ones that are around my age, because we were all like 30-ish or turning 30, and we were just like, what did we just fuck up like on an existential level by diving as hard as possible into this and not knowing a global pandemic was coming? So there was a moment for me where it was like pretty scary just on that level. And yeah, the relationship's the same, like from crowd to stage, like it's like a very like a like a I don't know, it's like a give and take. It's a big circle of energy, I guess.
True. And I think like one of the things I wanted to touch upon quickly also was just about coagulated bliss, right? Because what y'all have done in the past decade, I've realized, is y'all are always putting out new music. And while I've been podcasting for the last 4 or 5 years, this is the first time I had a press opportunity, and I was like, why hasn't it? I was scratching my head. I was like, why hasn't this happened earlier? So, which
Yeah,
brings me to
dude,
my
totally.
question. Uh, is there like a point where there's a start and end for your releases, or is there just like, you know, a hard drive or whatever sitting with all these riffs and you all decide how to kind of release it?
Oh no, there's like a total intentional plan. I mean, if you spread it to years, there's not like a point for point plan going on. Like we're gonna release 4 LPs like this and then two like this and then a collab. But when we go into write, there's always like a thought process behind like what is this going to be for? And I mean with the collabs are super easy because they don't even we don't even intentionally we don't work on those until it's all in agreement and everybody's either in the same room together or just like really focused on like a schedule. But other than that, when those guys start writing songs, there's always like there's a record and there's like a format in mind for it. So like they're writing songs, for this LP or for like right now I don't know if this will even end up the way it's being planned, but we always talk about doing a 10-inch because we just always liked that weird format. So he's writing songs in his head thinking like this is for a 10-inch and it might change, but yeah, there's always like pockets where and a lot of times too, I mean, like there's intention in the way he's writing. Spencer and Dave are writing songs specifically where like we want this record, like with Coagulated Bliss, it was really important that we leaned into like the noise rock thing a little more that we've loved so much for so many years, and we wanted the record to have more of like a punk feel to it. So there's like intention there too, like during those writing sessions or whatever you'd call it. But there aren't any like rules though either. I mean, it's just kind of what we're feeling.
So I love doing research and reading like past interviews and stuff. So
Yeah.
what I did was I read up one where I think it was Spencer who said it, correct me if I'm wrong, where he said this album we all wanted to be like Butthole Surfers plays grindcore.
Right,
Tell
very
me that
Spencer.
mindset. I mean, that sounds like really interesting. Like, so you said there was an intention, right? So tell me about that.
Well, I mean, so like Butthole Surfers and Melvins and Harvey Milk especially, like those are bands and like even like Sub Pop stuff like Sonic Youth obviously or any of that like Seattle kind of stuff. That's always been like a really really big deal for Spencer especially, and I think there's like a lot more parallels between like what we've been trying to do for many years and that kind of stuff. Um, so I think it just kind of made sense and it just took time for him to I don't know, like anybody else, like you're watching someone grow in real time. Like our first record came out when we were children. It's like it's not like the best music in the world or any by any means. It's like our first that's literally our first attempt any of us at making an LP in any band we've ever been in. Like that's the first stab at a full length. So you're literally watching us incubate over the years into like, something different. And like on one hand, it kind of sometimes I think it kind of sucks having our whole like growth period like entirely like set into the internet forever. Because it's probably I've learned it's like pretty nice when you start a new band with some experience and you get like a fresh go at it. Um, but on the other hand, it's like the Full of Hell thing, it's honest. It's like it's all like as real as possible. Like it's all at the surface. Like this is where we've been, this is where we want to go. And I think that's just like another step towards like us finding our own voice, even after like whatever, over a decade of trying to do that. And that's exciting for us. And that's what it's really about at the end of the day. I mean, like all of our favorite bands and musical heroes are really prolific and they're like, they're in this position and they like writing music. So like that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna write music. They're not gonna put out one record every 5 years or whatever. And like it's fine if that's what you do, but you know, it's about individual approach. And like for us, I think it's fortunate that it just kind of like naturally is like us kind of working through what we like and learning how to play our instruments over the years, and it's all documented.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned the Melvins, right? Because I had a chance to speak to them a few years ago. And I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
honestly, where do you start with a band like that, right? Because they've again released so much music.
Yeah, it's deep.
Like you can spend like hours just discussing each of those albums itself, right? And
Definitely.
yeah, if you've interacted with them, you know they're a bunch of fun and they just love taking the piss out of stuff. So
Yeah, they seem extremely funny.
yeah, so it was a really
Yeah.
fun conversation. But okay, at this point, I think let's play a song from Coagulated Bliss. Let all the listeners get an idea of what you're talking about. Which one, which track do you want to play from the album?
Let's play Doors to Mental Agony first. That was the first single, I guess you could say, that we chose to share. Because it kind of I just think it kind of shines a light on maybe like the different approach like pretty well.
Awesome. So here it is. All right, that was Dose to Mental Health, and I'm talking to Dylan from Full of Hell. Here's another question I had about the songwriting for Coagulated Bliss, and I'm just going to quote a bit from your press release, which says it was written and recorded shortly after the collaboration that you all did with Nothing, which was When No Birds Sang. Uh, what I also inferred from the press release was that that release, along with the one that you all did with The Body, was like a determining factor in how the songwriting for Coagulated Bliss turned out. Could you kind of elaborate a bit about how this process evolved, as you've said?
Yeah, sure. I mean, with any of those records where we write like a full length record with another band, a collaboration, those always have kind of changed who we are and kind of how we approach music. Because, we get into a room oftentimes with bands that, we're friends with and we're big fans of. All the collabs, we're like huge fans of the people that we've done them with. So you get into a room with a bunch of people in a new setting and everybody's voices in the room and you get to write music together. Like I mean, everybody writes differently. Like sometimes, like with Primitive Man, we discovered that we actually have like a really similar writing style, and like the writing lyrics with the singer of Primitive Man was like among the easiest tasks of my life. Like it was so quick and like felt, genuine and good. So but then when you get into a band with like nothing, they're we're not so different in the way we approach how we write music, but those guys are, we wrote with these dudes, Nikki and Doyle, who, are the primary songwriters in Nothing, and the way they approach music is just like it's just different, and they're geniuses. So like if you go in with an open mind, you can just learn so much from that experience. And we even the person we tracked with for the Nothing collab was this guy Will Putney, great producer. Our first time with him, and like totally an out of the box decision for us. We knew Will, we were like getting to know him, and we were like, let's do this. And he just definitely, I mean, like I said, all the people in the room just kind of have, if you keep your ears open, they have something like you can glean from them to like improve yourself. And yeah, with Nothing, we were learning like, what serves the song. And that the record has a lot of like quieter, softer moments, and like it has space. And I think like because of the kind of music we've been into growing up, like we like claustrophobia a lot sometimes. And I just think like learning to slow down is a good thing sometimes. I don't know. It's just I want to approach all that stuff like a learning experience. Like if I get to get into a room with my friends or people I look up to and like see how they do things, I want to like be quiet and see how they do things, and like, and I'm sure it goes the same way with some of those guys, when they're forced into a room with us. They you just have to adapt and pivot. It's just like a socializing thing too, You like learn how to work with people in different settings. And the studio is a high pressure setting sometimes, so you gotta go in with patience. It's good for you.
Yeah, and I must quickly add, when I saw that Will Putney was working on the album, that was a bit strange thing because considering he's known for like deathcore and stuff like that, right? But I realized sometimes it's better to work with someone who's like not known for your sound in a way. Is that something that you all experienced?
We generally go pretty in the pocket with the people we've recorded with. Like Coagulated Bliss was tracked with the guy that we've been recording with since I was like 20 years old, like 14 years ago or whatever. Putney is known. I think like he built his reputation on metalcore and stuff, but he's like a huge fan of extreme music, like all kinds of stuff, and like has a really good ear. And yeah, I think it was a really good decision to go to him because his tool set is just like it's not even that different, but his approach and his tool set is like different enough where it's like a guy like Putney who's so skilled and has like, a great approach and doing something that's like meant to be like warm and like kind of feeling analog and nice. Like that's something he was really excited to do because he fucks with that stuff like really hard. So yeah, I think it was a really good idea because the record our intention was for it to sound like like a real band playing, nothing like quantized or any of that kind of stuff, which he gets totally, but also for it to sound huge. Again, like a great, for us personally, it was a great move because we had an awesome time recording with him. And I think we'll do some Full of Hell stuff with him at some point too. We talk about that pretty often because he does get it. And a lot of times you go to these guys and like, yeah, you think about their skill sets and like how it could impact how your music already sounds. And it's interesting, whether you go to a guy like Steve Albini or like Kurt Ballou or whatever, they all have like they're all brilliant and like have their own approaches. It's just like, what you're trying to get out of it and what they might get out of it.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, okay, I want to touch a bit upon the lyrical themes of the album, and one thing that kind of struck me is again the press release kind of clearly said that you were not looking at like a broad monotony way of evil way, but like everyday horrors of small town America. And that kind of struck me because again, you hear like again, whether it's extreme metal, you hear a lot. I mean, how many albums are you going to hear about religion? D-Side kind of made their entire career doing that, or you've got like bands like Cannibal Corpse and stuff like that.
Right.
Uh, and as someone who lives in like Mumbai, India, which is again, I would say like the New York equivalent, because it's like easily
Yeah.
the most densely populated. I'm guessing like for me, that's where the claustrophobia thing comes in, right? Just like listening to that kind of music, it kind of fits in. But
Right.
since you all grew up in Ocean City, and it says that that kind of inspired it, uh, and from someone again who's never been to America, has kind of watched television shows and web series and stuff like that. Uh, could you, and as much as you want to share, what kind of inspired you all to go down and explore this lyrical theme on this album, and why
Well,
Coagulated Bliss?
well, our friend that we had do all of the artwork, he's like a really old friend of mine, Brian Montori, and I was talking with him before I had really started writing lyrics pretty hard for the record, just getting him on board to do the art because we just felt like it was time finally to do something, just different, like and super colorful. And Brian was our guy. He told me that he thought it was time that I came home and wrote about what I knew. I've entered parenthood in the last like year and a half. We're older now. Like, I don't know, things have just come around, things are just different in our lives. And he felt like it was the moment where we should be writing about home. So that really struck me. I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I felt like I hadn't really done that in like a really direct way in a while because there are a lot of experiences to draw on from of my own, of my bandmates, of our neighbors. We all live really rural and like most places in the world, like classism is like there's like a lot of economic disparity. And there are troubles that come with that. And America had, we have the opioid epidemic where like these pharmaceutical companies flooded the streets for, I don't know, decades or something with basically, pill pressed heroin. Um, so that's still like a huge thing. I mean, there's like pill heads everywhere. Meth's big here as it is, I'm sure, all over the world. And it's not just like a drug odyssey thing either. I mean, with the economic disparity, there also is like lack of opportunity and like this feeling of isolation and being trapped. There's no opportunities for you, nowhere to go. Um, it's just it felt really easy to draw on the experiences of like the people immediately around me and to maybe make things a little more literal, to tell stories that at least in part, were grounded in like real world experience. My bandmates, they all grew up in Ocean City, Maryland, and I actually grew up in the middle of the state of Pennsylvania, which is more like Appalachian forest. But Ocean City is pretty much Appalachian forest right up to the beach. So there really isn't a whole lot of cultural difference between our towns. So it was pretty easy to just like write from a place that felt organic for me. And I don't know, it made it a lot more personal for us because I've always written about my what's going on in my head or like what I'm feeling or experiences of my friends and traumatic events in my life or whatever. But to approach it more literally, I think it was like a pretty cool experience for everybody. And again, because the art was so different, because the music was kind of turning a page to something a little different, it felt like a good time to maybe like readjust perspective, you know, because over the years, so much changes about how you approach these things. So yeah, I don't know, pretty personal one.
Yeah, and just a couple of thoughts to add there. I mean, I did watch the Netflix documentary on the opioid crisis, and that just kind of blew my mind just how long it had been going on for, right? It
Yeah,
was
man.
just like for at least us and the rest of the world, seemed like something that just happened like a few years, but it had been going on for a long time. And yeah,
Yeah.
it was just like a complete mind fuck, to put it
And I
mildly.
mean, the craziest part is like there really isn't any accountability. I mean, it's not crazy. It is reality. It's just how it's always been and probably always going to be. But there was no accountability. Like the Sackler family, they just bought their way out of it. These like everybody has a story. Like pretty much, you can like point to a clinic in your area that was like just writing prescriptions, for money, basically, just giving these pills out to people. It never stopped. It's never gonna stop. Um, yeah, it's pretty gnarly. And the more like in Pennsylvania, there was a lot of coal mining. And as that left, I mean, like the hole it left in place, like that of that industry, like there was no opportunity. You can get a house for like $5,000 in some of these coal region towns, which is like really, 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 really cheap because there's no opportunity there at all. And I don't know, that's just all around us. That's like a worldwide phenomenon, I think, that disparity, that gap getting bigger.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of dive in and share a bit, that's exactly how like I ended up in Mumbai because my grandfather years ago lived in a smaller part of India, moved to Mumbai for opportunity, and it's just one of those things, right? But
Right.
it's just that I'm the third generation now living here, so it's slightly kind of different. Uh, but even just to add to what you talked about in your 30s, because like I'm closer to now to 40, and
Hmm.
correct me if I'm wrong, especially since you talked a bit earlier about also looking at life as you're older in your 30s. A lot of your childhood experiences you just view with a completely different lens, right? And I think
Oh, I
that
know.
is possibly something also because I think, and it's weird because I also do some of this for work. Get this, your prefrontal lobe actually only develops at 25. So
Oh, I didn't even know
everything,
that.
and I was just like, everything that you do before that, I mean, like, think about it. At 18, you in India, you can vote. Uh, 21, you can drink.
Yeah,
Uh, a lot of that stuff you can do, and it's just crazy. But
definitely.
I'm guessing that's where also, and I mean, for me, honestly, like, and I've had this conversations with my friends. A lot of what I deal with, I think music is a great way for me to channel it, just kind of uh, relating to it. And I think um, yeah, I'm pretty sure like when I listen to some of the music, obviously it's very hard because I'm kind of attaching my experiences to someone who already had it. Uh, but how's your relationship with that? I mean, like, have you had fans or people come up to you and say, "I know exactly what you're talking about in this song," but you're like completely very different individuals, different experiences?
Yes and no. Like if I talk to someone that relates to the music, a lot of times I find something I think that I'm like a relatively empathetic person, like in the grand scheme of things. So like I want to relate, and because I want subconsciously to relate to people, my perception of it is, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, even if we're not necessarily coming from the same place. So like I want so badly to relate to people anyway that I'm more often having the experience of like, yeah, I get where you're coming from. Um, it's a nice thing. I think it's like, yeah, that's part of the reward for like the work is like having it connect with anybody. Like once you write it and put it out there, it's not yours anymore. It's this own independent thing. So you definitely get like a weird relationship with it, you know? It's just it's an art medium. You put it out in the world and it's everybody's now. So yeah, my relationship has changed. As I get older, I just, I've always been like a on and off kind of an existentially dismal person. Maybe like pretty scared, you know? So just as I've gotten older, I've just like faced many little existential crisis over and over. So I just interpret them differently as I move on because I have to keep moving on. And like, I don't know, you sit with something long enough and you just learn how to adapt with it. And it's the same as it is with the band. I mean, like, it's this cool fun thing we get to do, and it's kind of there's like an element of narcissism to it because it's like the whole like it's an attention economy bullshit thing. You just like learn to digest it differently as you get older, and like you try to approach like the day to day with humility. You know what I mean? And like it just changes the way you look at everything. I found personally that like there was like a pretty hard gap between my 20s and 30s because COVID happened like right when I was like 20, 29, about to be 30, right when it went down. And I just remember coming back like a couple years later on our first tour, and like it's in my head a little bit, but because of I hadn't hung out with people for a couple of years, I'm pretty isolated out here. I was just noticing like young kids at the shows, and I was just like, holy shit. I really do feel like I feel different, and I'm feel like I'm getting something different out of this. And some of the things that I was getting out of this, I'm no longer getting out of it. And it's not a bad thing. It's just like it is, it is what it is. But yeah, it was pretty stark for me. Like I just felt like a circuit get disconnected and maybe plugged in somewhere else between.
Yeah, and the strange part is, I think all of us experienced it at different
Oh, definitely.
levels. I think just like acknowledging and dealing with it was very different. But okay, since you talked about this, I don't know if you noticed this while you were on tour last. At least here in India, I noticed because of that couple of years that was no shows happening. There's a completely new audience now for live music,
Oh
and they
yeah.
have never experienced rock, metal, or any kind of live. So
Yeah.
for them, it's just like, oh my God. And sometimes I'm a little jealous because I want to have that experience again of what, because I know what it was like. But for them,
Yeah.
it's just like this completely new. Have you all noticed like a completely new audience for Full of Hell
Dude.
at shows?
I mean, okay, so I had this prediction once I felt like things were going to come back that I thought there would be like a huge renaissance for live music. And I think maybe my perspective is skewed just based on who we're touring with and hanging with and like what we're doing, but like I do feel like there's been like a huge boom. Part of that had nothing to do with like COVID though. I mean, like part of it definitely was people excited to get back out because when touring started happening again, the shows were completely insane. And I think they've continued that way. But there's just new mediums to get information across to people. And I'm being a hypocrite here because literally have nothing to do with TikTok. I don't have an account. I don't know how it works. I sound like a fucking old idiot, but none of us like use it. But there are bands that break over here, like get huge just because of TikTok. I mean, they're good bands, but when I say that, what I mean is like you can be a great band and like try really hard, but maybe it just doesn't happen. Like there's so much circumstance involved that like it's not even there's like it's not even merit based sometimes. So I think it's in the long run, I think it's a good thing. A lot of people like to complain about like the new wave of like TikTok kids, especially with like hardcore punk shows. Um, just because like there's like a way to be at a show, and I think like when there's hundreds of new kids at your show that are like don't have manners, maybe sometimes like and maybe with especially with like shows like hardcore shows where like like people go off, you know what I mean? If the kid doesn't have like a good idea of like what to do when and how to do it, and like I don't know, they could totally like be acting out in a way that nobody's having, you know what I mean? So I get it, but I think in the long run, the extra medium to get people into music is like a good thing because I don't know. Especially with guitar music and especially with extreme guitar music. Like it's a small little thing. So it's like it's a fucking miracle that my band or any of our bands can play to the people that we're playing to now. It's like it doesn't even it's kind of funny. Like I talk about it all the time with my friends. I'm just like, isn't it kind of fucking hilarious that we're like playing this crazy style of music that we love and that like people will actually like pay dollars to come and see it live? Like it's just it's cool. I mean, I wouldn't attribute all of it to COVID though. It's like I would put most of it on just like new modes of communication on the internet because anybody can do this now more than
I mean,
ever.
I mean, since I'm pretty sure there is, and I have to double check, but I'm sure 856 has covered you guys at least a couple of times, if not once.
Oh, many
Um,
times. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
and you remember the entire dancing hardcore man, like Harm's Way, right?
Right,
They
James.
kind of
Yeah,
just
yeah,
blew up
Hardaway.
because of that. So hey,
Right.
why not, right? So that's just another example of what you're talking about. But quick thought, I always felt like hardcore and grindcore is TikTok music because it's just like short, fast. You
Yeah, it's
can get it
formatted
done.
properly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it works out.
I can see the time running down on this. So I have a couple of questions more for you. Uh, you guys have a very hectic few months coming up to you. I mean, you've
I
got
know.
your tour with, okay, let me take a deep breath for this. You've got a tour with Dying Fetus, 200 Stab Wounds, and Cruelty, who are from Japan. I fucking love them.
Yeah, they're
You're
sick.
coming all the way across India and going to Australia and New Zealand and playing with Thou. You're touring Southeast Asia in August, which is not too far away from me.
Not too many shows though.
Okay, but tell me, I mean, like, what's it like? Just what's the preps like? What are you looking forward to? I mean, like, I'm not sure if you vegan, then like Southeast Asia is great also because of the food, but
So right now I have like I've just come through, I don't know, just years of dumb experiences in my own head, like figuring out like what I was doing and my own like anxieties and whatever. And I think right now I'm like in an extremely positive mindset. I'm fucking stoked for all of it. It's always been really important. And at this point, we've made like some of our best friends, all of our friends pretty much through this. So, like, for instance, when we go to Australia, I've been friends with Thou now for like a decade. I love those guys so much, and we never get to see them because we live in different parts of the country. Down in Canberra, one of my best friends in the whole world, like, would have been best man in my wedding style, is like touring with us. He's the guy that brought us down to Australia the first time. South Asia, it's been like about 10 years. Going to a couple new places. Like we didn't even get to go to Bangkok or Ho Chi Minh last time. Um, I mean, I'm just excited for all of it. The prep's cool. I mean, like it's nice now to be doing this stuff because we've been doing it long enough that I don't feel like the mystery, the scary mystery of it. Like when I talk to people, I feel like I know what's going on relatively. So like it's fun to plan the trips. I've always loved going on tour. So, now I'm 34. I've been doing it, for a bit of time and we have booking agents and stuff, but it's still really hands-on and pretty DIY for the most part. So it's nice to be involved in all those details and to have it be working out. It's like a really fortunate thing. And at this point in my life, I'm just trying to go with the flow and enjoy the blessing of getting to do this like as much as possible. And I have friends who I feel like have come around that turn too, It's easy to just like kind of like feel like burnout on this or that, but trying to step forward.
awesome. I mean, like now that you're saying this, I'm just like contemplating because it's practically cheaper to fly to Bangkok than other parts of India,
Yeah,
and and also the crowd is fucking insane. I mean, like I've
dude, yeah,
seen some of the
get that
most
impression.
insane things there. But all right, I have to kind of wrap this up. So,
Yeah,
final
sorry about
question
that.
I have for you is: you guys have been doing this for like 15 odd years. If
Something like
there's
that.
one thing that you think you'd like to achieve, say in the next few years, if not like longer, what would you say that would be?
I mean, honestly, maintain because I don't feel like there's anything walled off to us. I just want to keep writing music that like means something to us. I want to derive all of my enjoyment from what we're doing and not like outside perception or like, any other outside anything. I just want it to be about us. So like I'm more in like a maintain mode right now because I think we're doing everything I want to be doing. I just want like everybody to feel it and like enjoy it. It's really important because it's so finite. We need to like grab onto it and just like go 100%. So that's my only goal is to just keep it real, I guess.
Awesome. And since we're down to the wire, any final words, anything for shout outs to anyone listening? Go for
I
it.
mean, just thank you for having us on the podcast. Trendcrusher's sick. I don't know, go start a band. If you're a kid and you think you want to do this, you can do this. So just go do it and you know, be a nice person and be humble and start your own band. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it. And
Yeah, it was a
catch you
pleasure.
down the road sometime.